Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show, Week 10. That's right, Utilization Report edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. And boy, buddy, was it a great day for trades going on in the NFL. Breaking that down, risers and fallers in utilization and so much more ahead of Week 10. But of course, I'm joined by the man who actually produces the Utilization Report in the first place, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland in the house. Dwain, I'm going to stash you a question, but I'll shave it for later.
Oh my God, you sound like my wife. She's been doing that for like the last 4 days. Last night I was trying to watch the Cowboy game. She kept asking me, I must ask you a question. So yeah, I appreciate it, Ian. Way to keep it going. But you know, she's bothering me so much about it. I am one of these people, I have to tell you, and I think it's because I have siblings, that if like you bug me enough about something, like I'm just going to keep doing it. And so I'll just say with all the jokes, she's keeping the mustache around for longer.
You were out at the bar, watching some good live music with our friend and coworker Matthew Friedman this weekend. Apparently, Dwain, one fine, nice gentleman, would not stop talking to you about the fact that you do kind of look like Pedro Pascal with the mustache. Any comments?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I thought he was just like, it was fine. He said it once or twice, and he said it like 3 or 4 more times. And this was a guy that worked at the restaurant that we were at. And so finally I got up and I was going to use the restroom and he was doing it again. I was like, hey man, you just want a selfie? Like, will you just go ahead and knock this out and get a picture? And then he came over and showed everybody at the table the picture of the selfie with him and Pedro Pascal. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Amazing stuff. Dwain also dressed up as Ron Burgundy in the latest episode of Talk Data to Me. Make sure you guys check that one out, just purely for the outfit and I guess the fantastic content as well, if you haven't already.
We broke the guitar out on that one.
Wow. Big day, Dwain.
Yeah,
big day. I know. Usually I got to get you a couple.
Yeah, Friedman had the light. I mean, not Friedman. Bloom had the lighter going at the end, like he was at a concert. Bloom was harmonizing. It was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
I was going to say, I think the only time I've gotten you to break the guitar out on a stream is after, a handful of beers when we're doing a draft or something like that. So I gotta get better, like Sigmund Bloom, could certainly do to get that out. But enough of that, guys. Again, you're here for the trade deadline for the utilization report and accordingly. Let's get into it. It is time for our DraftKings opening lines. Well, I should say, Dwayne, we're going to start things off with trade chatter, but we actually had some even bigger news happen within the last 15 minutes. Jacoby Brissett has been named the Cardinals' starting quarterback for at least Week 10 against the Seahawks. Jonathan Gannon leaving himself a little bit of room here, but did say, in fact, quote, I like what the offense is doing right now. So, Dwayne, a little bit of a 180 from Mr. Jonathan Gannon because he was asked last night about this. Of course, we can all change our opinions after a nice night's sleep, but he said nothing has changed and there's nothing to add to that about Kyler being the QB once healthy. So, look, it was the Cowboys defense that Jacoby, managed to dice up. And let's face it, everyone and their mother seems to dice up the Cowboys defense. But to Jacoby's credit, man, even the 2 games before that, Packers and Colts, making some big time throws and just really, you just eye test, even if we're not, exactly the most knowledgeable ball knowers, future, offensive coordinators of the world or anything. The offense has looked much, much better and just easier flowing with Jacoby under center.
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby's played well this year. We're talking about 287 passing yards per game. Kyler's at 192. So as fantasy managers, you should also want this to continue on, especially if you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who obviously had, a really good first half, and they kept talking about it. He kind of slowed down in the second half. Obviously, Trey McBride going to do Trey McBride things, but if you have a 25% target share in an offense that throws for 280 yards per game versus a 25% target share in an offense that throws for 192, it doesn't take a scientist or a mathematician to know which one of those things you're going to prefer, Ian. So, yeah, I think this is great for Brissett. You mentioned before the show, this probably just leaves the door open for them to just keep playing Brissett until he has a bad game, and then they can say, oh, yeah, Kyler's better. We're going to go back to him. But I wouldn't be surprised if this lasts longer than just this week. I went ahead and updated things for the rest of the year. I still have Kyler playing 13 games. It prorates everything, but basically still have Kyler playing 70% of the games and 30% going to Brissett. So my guess is this lasts a little bit longer than this week, but we do eventually see Kyler back under center.
This is a situation where Jacoby does keep the job. It's not a contract the Cardinals should have too much trouble getting out of as long as they can find a trade partner. If they did choose to trade Kyler and designate it as a post-June 1st trade, they would only have about a little over $10 million in dead money. They would save north of $30 million against the cap. So whether it could be the Dolphins, another sad quarterback going the Cleveland Browns, I'm sure there could be many teams out there that could potentially want Kyler's services. But look, we've seen Kyler Murray play some great football over the years, not particularly this year. All that said, Dwayne, again, I was just kind of going through the schedule and his last few starts before the show. I mean, yes, 3 straight losses for Kyler before he ended up having this injury by a total of 5 points. So again, wasn't playing well. Honestly, he was playing the worst of his career as a pure passer. So not saying the Cardinals were out of line, but it is, unfortunate how just a few bad bounces or, your starting running back just dropping the ball before the goal line can sometimes cost people jobs. So that's that. And as Dwayne said, nice upgrades here for Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., every pass catcher involved. With that though, Dwayne, let's get into the trade deadline. Only a couple fantasy relevant moves. I would say the bigger deals were obviously on the defensive side of the ball, but still a few fantasy relevant things to talk about. First up, the Jaguars acquiring Raiders wide receiver Jakobi Meyers. They sent a 4th and 6th rounder for his services. So first up, we'll talk about Jakobi in Jacksonville. Dwayne, certainly seems like a move that you would make if you are expecting to have Brian Thomas Jr. out of the picture here for a little bit. No words yet in that ankle injury, but just based on some of the learned doctors on Twitter, it does sound like it could be of the high ankle variety. So let's assume BTJ is out of the picture for a couple weeks. Where are you kind of thinking Jakobi falls in the fantasy wide receiver, just range?
Coming in and learning a new offense is really tough on wide receivers. Now, we have seen it work out well before. Actually, with the same receiver, we saw Amari Cooper arrive from the Raiders and immediately ball out for the Cowboys. Then we saw him get traded to the Bills, and he stunk and was never able to get on the field. So these things can be a bit mercurial. We don't always know the way that they're going to work out. I will say this, Parker Washington is probably the projected number 1 for this week. We'll see with Dwain Brown. He's got the concussion, but if he were able to play, I would still pencil him in as the second option on the team, and then I would have Jakobi Meyers third. Now, after that, you give him a couple of weeks to work in. I think he probably moves up to being the second or third wide receiver on the team. The problem for me here, Ian, is Brian Thomas Jr. kind of does his thing, but Jakobi Meyers is actually he's a lot like what you have with Parker Washington, more of a possession kind of guy. Now, Dwain Brown has shown in the past he can get down the field. He's worked more, I know, from the slot and a little more underneath in this particular offense, but they could still use him in different ways. So we'll see what happens. The challenge I have is when everyone's healthy, what does this look like? We've got Travis Hunter on IR right now, so that keeps things open for the next few weeks for Jakobi Meyers. But man, I just did the rest of season projections and I took everyone down because I think they're just going to rotate all these guys. I've got Brian Thomas Jr. under an 85% route participation the rest of the way. I got Travis Hunter under 70%. I've got Dwain Brown under 50%. I've got Parker Washington under 50%. And I've got Jakobi Meyers at 55%. If I'm just thinking about the way it plays out probably over the next, several weeks after he kind of gets acclimated. So I don't think we're going to like this, honestly. I guess the only thing we can hope for is it makes the offense better and maybe that helps out, Travis Etienne, maybe that helps out Trevor Lawrence. But overall, I think this is kind of bad news for everybody involved in Jacksonville as far as fantasy goes. And it's not good for Jakobi Meyers, in my opinion, either.
Could have Brenton Strange back before too long as well. All ahead of a matchup, Dwayne, against the Houston Texans. So I would say everyone, at least for this week, if you have a close start sit question with a pass catcher from the Jaguars, probably would lean towards that other guy. And yeah, any of those big fab bids you guys had ready to go Parker Washington, go ahead and knock those down by roughly 75%. Over to the Raiders side of things, Dwayne, again, no more Jakobi Meyers. So I'm thinking maybe we start thinking about giving this Brock Bowers guy a chance in our starting lineup. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. That's a little bit tricky, to give Brock Bowers his chance in our lineup. Yeah. So, they did trade for Tyler. We'll talk about Brock Bowers here in a bit. They did trade for Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett's done nothing though, Ian. This year, he's got a 13% targets or 14% targets per route run. Was not good the last 2 years either. Jack Besh has kind of had a chance over these last few weeks to step up. Their second rounder out of LSU. But he's got a 13% targets per route run. So really it's Trey Tucker, and Dante Thornton, Ian, they already tried that. So you know what I noticed this last weekend is, man, they used 12 personnel more And I don't know that that's not the best way to go. Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, man, let's do it. Let's let these two guys get out there and ball. Michael Mayer's got a 22% targets per route run on the season. Brock Bowers is at 26%. So like, let's just run 12 personnel like 60-70% of the time. Doesn't that seem like that would just be a Pete Carroll thing anyway? Like if he could pull that off, like he would be really happy about two tight ends.
100%, man, particularly with the way they used them last week, because earlier on in the year, we actually were seeing Bowers work a lot more in line versus in the slot or out wide. Last week, he was up to 35 snaps in the slot or out wide, only 16 in line. So again, obviously capable of winning from all over the field, but I'm with you, man. Put your best 4 players out there. I don't think, that would, mean you should be having 3 wide receivers. So again, big time upgrades, not upgrades. We're loving Brock Bowers. We're still loving Ashton Genty. Wouldn't get too excited about anyone else, but I do agree with Dwain where honestly, when you're trying to pick between Lockett or Thornton or even Jack Besh, real winner there might be Michael Mayer. Let's talk about the other big wide receiver trade, Dwain. We had the Seahawks go ahead and get I'm so sorry, Cooter Doodle. Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed sent a 2026 4th and 5th rounder for his services. So obviously Clint Kubiak reuniting with Rashid Shaheed was a small sample size of those two working together in 2024, but he was on the receiving end, I should say, of some beautiful deep balls from Derek Carr. So hey, Sam Darnold certainly playing quarterback as well as just about anyone in the league at the moment. Fantastic real life fit, Dwain. That said, in fantasy, do you think this really moves Shaheed from being a boomer bust wide receiver 3 to anything bigger?
No, I think now we don't know what we have because they like to run 12 personnel. They like to use their 2 tight ends with Arroyo and AJ Barner. We've seen Torrey Horton play actually really well for being a rookie. He balled out, whenever we had Cooper Kupp out on this last weekend on Monday night, or not Monday night, but on Sunday night. So yeah, I'm not sure with Rashid Shaheed. I think this is actually a downgrade like initially, and we're just going to have to wait and see where he ends up. I think the way that it ends up like really working out, Ian, is if he displaces Cooper Kupp, who hasn't really done anything, but they paid him a decent amount. They seem to like Cooper Kupp, so I don't think we can assume that's going to happen for now and the rest of season projections. Basically, I left JSN alone, and Cooper Kupp's at an 86% route participation this year. I bumped him down to 70. Torrey Horton's at a 58%. I bumped him down to 40. And I essentially gave part of those routes and all the other backup guys. I just essentially zeroed them out and gave it all to Rashid Shaheed. So that comes out as JSN clear number 1, 93% of the routes, Cooper Kupp 70, 40% to Torrey Horton, and 60% to Rashid Shaheed as the wide receiver 3. And again, that's a guess, guys. That's like me just like doing the best I can. We'll have to wait and see a couple of games and see how it works out. I will say this. With the way Sam Darnold's throwing the ball, there is absolutely upside if Shaheed does land in a better role here. Like the ceiling is definitely higher. We just need to see what the playing time is going to look like. If he somehow is out there, man, 85, 90%, and he was in the base 2 wide receiver sets and Cooper Kupp got just kicked into the slot and Torrey Horton became the wide receiver 4, I think we would really like Rashid Shaheed in that case.
And honestly, man, I'm more optimistic about a quicker, learning of the playbook and everything for Shaheed here than someone like Jakobi Meyers. We're talking about a vertical route tree that, again, he spent all of last season already working with anyway. So not trying to be low on the move. Honestly, the fact that we have Shaheed changing teams midseason, I still would project him to be inside the position top 36 more weeks than not, I think is perfectly fine. So again, still going to be ranked probably alongside guys like Jameson Williams, of the world more weeks than not. But hey, still looking good. Certainly got a nice quarterback upgrade for himself. And with the Saints, Dwain, again, I don't think it's too much rocket science. We have more targets to go around for Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely for the Saints. I mean, and we need it. When you look at what's going on with Tyler Shuck, I know a lot of it came down to ultimately being the time of possession was crazy. They hardly had the ball all this last weekend. He made some nice throws, but we also know what can happen with these rookie quarterbacks, and it really can hurt from a standpoint of what it does for the wide receivers. So obviously with Chris Olave, he was already balling out, so he's going to continue to be the number 1 target there. But really, the next player in line for me is Juwan Johnson. I wouldn't be surprised to see his route participation, probably stick about where it's been 80, 82%, but wouldn't be surprised at all. Like if we saw those targets creep back up again without Rashid Shaheed out there to battle, because really, man, it's Brandon Cooks, Ian, he's pretty washed.
He's old.
Trey Palmer could come back. Yeah, he's old. Devon Valet, a guy they traded for, the big slot from Denver. Maybe he gets more work. But I just don't see us being excited about anyone in this offense other than probably Chris Olave or Juwan Johnson.
Even Alvin Kamara at this point, man, the RB36 in PPR points per game. I don't think he'd ever finish outside of the top 12. If he did, it was very freaking close. So just, again, unfortunate stuff for Kamara in that Saints offense. But hey, maybe could be enough targets for Dwayne, and Chris Olave to do their thing. Otherwise, the biggest trade of the day really was the Colts going out there and getting Jets cornerback one, Sauce Gardner. They sent 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell. So maybe new life there for the talented yet much maligned Colts wide receiver. The Cowboys also, were another team that took some of the Jets' best players in the form of defensive lineman Quentin Williams. They sent a 2026 second rounder and 2027 first rounder. Jerry Jones's big deadline deal. We'll see if he can help their, inability to cover pretty much anyone. I'm not very optimistic. Cowboys also got Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson. And the Chargers, I will say, try to spruce up the offensive line. Got Saints tackle/guard Trevor Penning. So any big thoughts here, Dwayne, other than, just the Cowboys games continuing to be pretty miserable to watch for people actually, invested and hopefully them winning from time to time?
Yeah, I mean, look, Quentin Williams is a really good player. So, I mean, the Cowboys did get a good player, but he's 27 years old and you gave up a first and a second round pick, and no big deal. Mozzie Smith still hasn't got out of his stance, since he was drafted. So I don't think that the Jets are getting much there. So I think it really comes down to like the age question and what you said, like, is that gonna help them cover people? And let's be honest, like Quentin Williams is coming from a defense that's been terrible that actually had a really good cover corner. So, we'll see. Quentin Williams is a good player. In my heart of hearts, I just kind of wish we still had Micah Parsons. And I think that's where I kind of land. Can we just have Micah Parsons back, and stop with all these other trades? I think the actual biggest one there that you also mentioned after the other guys we covered for fantasy really is Trevor Penning. Because, man, Joe Alt probably out for the season now for the Chargers. So anything that they can do, the Chargers, to upgrade their offensive line, that's good for Justin Herbert and all of the passing game weapons.
1,000% there. So again, hectic trade deadline. We'll see if any deals continue to flow in throughout the show. But for now, I'm going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming with the utilization report. First, a quick word, though, to our friends over at DraftKings. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a scholar, the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay on the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up a promo code FANTASYLIFE. Bet just $5 and you will get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. It's time for the world famous utilization report presented by DraftKings. Dwayne has crunched the data. He's watched the film and he has all the goodness that you need to know ahead of week 10 to get those fantasy rosters right. I kid you not, Dwayne, reading this every single week makes me smarter in fantasy, but also just makes me a better person overall. So we truly thank you for your service. And with that, let's get into the biggest headlines, starting off with Rico Dowdle, man, right back into mid-range RB1 territory. He has accounted for 3 of the top 25 highest scores at the position this year. Might not be done yet, because guess what? This week, finally, a good matchup is on tap here for him at home against the Saints. The Panthers are favored by 5.5. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, man. Finally, fantasy managers and NFL coaches can align. The fantasy managers were like, man, do you not just see how good the other guy is? And finally, for one time in our life, the head coach actually goes, you know what, guys, we do see how good the other guy is. And we're actually going to give him the rock, which is really great to see. So a 74% snap share in week 9 for Rico Dowdle. He had 141 yards, Ian, and 2 touchdowns as the Carolina Panthers upset the Green Bay Packers. So he rewarded the head coach and the rest of the coaching staff for making that change. So I think it is something that we're going to see stick. Here's the big thing with Dowdle, man. 31.5 fantasy points per game in the 3 games where he's carried the full workload. Like, that's absolutely freaking insane. He's got a utilization score of 92 over that period. You guys can see it here on the screen. Thanks to Swing and everybody for getting these graphics together for us. While maintaining that pace, again, isn't like likely, but there's just still so much room, Ian. Like, when you're scoring 31.5 fantasy points, you could drop by 5 and still be like the running back 1 on the rest of the season. So he's been very efficient. So not going to explain all that, guys. You guys know how good Rico Dowdle's been. Like, the big thing, he ranks 3rd in yards per carry at 5.6, and all the other underlying stuff, yards after contact, missed tackles forced, it's all there for him. So I put together a couple scenarios, Ian, and I'm going to pose this to you. You get to pick which one of these scenarios. I already pretty much know which one you're going to choose, but I'm going to throw the question out there. So scenario 1, in this scenario, we are going to use Rico Dowdle's utilization score from this season in those three starts. It's a 92. Okay. His comparisons average 19.1 fantasy points per game. 92% of them were top 12 running back options. Ian, 72% of them were top 6 running back. So this is the bullish case for Dowdle. And it does have some risks, because basically what you're saying is, I don't care about small samples. I'm just going to go with the 3 years this year. There were 3 games this year where they've started him. And I think that's what Rico Dowdle is. And if you do, like, he might be a top 3 running back. And that's okay. That's one option. Here's option number 2. We could be a little more balanced, and we could take a step back and say, Rico Dowdle did play 8 games as the starter for the Cowboys last year, and he had a utilization score of 77. And if we put that together with his 85 from this year, and guys, that actually just right out of the gate, that weights his 3 games from this year more than the 8. Right? Because we're just putting those 2 scores together. This is what it looks like, Ian. Running back 1 through 6, 23%. So that's still pretty good. Running back 7 through 12, 40%. So 63% of the time, you still had a running back 1, not the 92% we said earlier. But man, the next bucket is running back 13 to 18, and that's 30%. So I want to throw it out to you. Which scenario are you going with? And then I'll tell you my thoughts.
My brain says scenario 2, but dang it, Dwain, my heart says scenario 1. Sometimes you got to trust your heart in fantasy football land, man. So my one hesitation before I throw it back to you, it's just, I know he's crushed it, guys. He's literally 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards despite being in a part-time role. He's 3rd in rushing yards per game. It's not even the benefit of him having an extra one. He's only behind Jonathan Taylor and James Cook. Those 2 first smash spots, though, Dwain, did come against the Cowboys and Dolphins, okay, who are right there with the Bengals, who are probably the worst run defenses in the league. I know he did it against the Packers, but, man, this offensive line has been banged up. I'm just thinking Rico, as much as he has been literally Superman this year at the running back position, probably so is more so a great, I would say, which is still great, but scenario 2 for me. But I want to be a believer.
Yeah, I'm with you. So the way I put it in the final takeaway is, look, he offers high-end running back 1 upside. And if he has a less than optimal run out, like, you still have a really good chance at a low-end running back 1. So there's no 2 ways about it. Like, if you picked him up off the waiver wire, or if you happen to be one of the people that drafted Rico Dowdle, you are absolutely loving it. And my guess is, I haven't seen your ranks yet, Ian, but where'd you end up? Running back 6, 7, 5? We got some teams on bye this week. I know he's a top 6 guy this week.
For you, Dwain, I couldn't get him in top 6. I put him RB7 ahead of Saquon Barkley, though. Do you know how weird that felt, Dwain, to put Rico Dowdle ahead of Saquon Barkley? It's crazy. Yeah. You should try it.
I may try it. I'll say, like, I have to give Rico, like, major props. Like, playing in an offense with a quarterback as bad as Bryce Young, and everyone knows, like, you're the thing that they have to stop. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but a very good outlook for Rico Dowdle.
CMC, JT, Bijan, Gibbs, James Cook, Josh Jacobs. Those are the only guys I have in front of him. I guess you could bump him ahead of Jacobs if you wanted to. That would be the one. He's been playing through the calf injury and all of that. But again, special company either way. Would you sell high in him, Dwain, if someone is a full believer? I think I'm happy. I think it's found money, but I'm saying I think it's found money. You got him on the waiver wire or a late round pick, which is an awesome job by you. Look, if you can get a legit wide receiver 1 for him, that's fine. But I'm not taking some package deal here, because I do think there's a very good chance we're looking at a rest of season RB1.
Yeah, and when we say we would get rid of him, it's because someone is going bananas over him, right? Someone would really need to value him as a top 6 running back. And if they did, and you liked the rest of your roster and you need a receiver or you need something else, then yeah, I would certainly consider it, because guys, it's still a 3-week sample against 2 bad defenses and 1 good defense. And we have seen Rico Dowdle for a long time. There's a chance also, Ian, that he turns into a pumpkin. Like, it could happen. Like, that's still in the range of outcomes. This is not like, a guy that's been an elite running back for his whole career. He's running hot right now, and we believe in it. But, like, you got to be so reminded about it, man. Like, there's still a chance. Like, and again, like, even his comp said 19.1 fantasy points per game. That's still great. That's a top 6 running back, to be honest. Going back to the year 2012, that's going to make you a top 6 running back. But if somebody really thinks he's a 30 point per game guy and they want to trade you like Jamar Chase and something along with it, then you're just going to, okay, like, I would take that.
I'm with you on that. But again, make sure they're trading up. I don't want to see these, wide receiver 2 and like a low end RB2 trying to package deal for Rico. As always, trying to come away with the best player in the trade. Good chance it's going to be Rico, and far more than not. Let's talk about the tight end 1, Dwain. No conversation about if he's top 5 or top 6. He is top 2 and not 2. Brock Bowers returns to the lineup with an absolute boom. The highest scoring fantasy game of the season. 12 catches, 127 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Just incredible stuff, Dwain. Going back to week 1 of last season, position best 15.9 PPR points per game. And there's a bunch of noise in that of him playing hurt and doing all this. No more Jakobi Meyers in Vegas. Brock Bowers, man. Tight end 1. And honestly, if we were doing just a draft for the rest of the season right now, I'd be surprised if he made it out of the first
round. After 1 game, but it's the reminder of what he already was. You know what I mean? Yep. So Zoe had 2 players on her fantasy bench this weekend. One of them was Brock Bowers. He scored a 100 utilization score. And the other one was Drake London, who scored a 100 utilization score. It's the first time, I believe, in the history, I was trying to check it, that we've had 2 100 utilization scores in the same week. And my daughter had both of them on her roster because she's smart, but not in her lineup because her dad is a complete moron. So, Brock Bowers, yeah, she did still win. She did still
win.
She
there we go.
She still squeaked out the win, so she got the W. Javonte didn't help her as much as she hoped last night, but she won. Bowers, we can keep this quick. Look, obviously he's been out, with the PCL sprain. Took the time to rest, came back, and really, looked like the Brock Bowers that we were used to seeing last year, maybe even a version that was better than that. Looked like he had a lot of pent-up aggression just awaiting to come back. But if we exclude the injured games from this season and go back and include his games from last year, he's actually averaging 16.9 fantasy points per game. So that's week 1 as well as week 9 from this year, and then all of his games from last year. Over that span, Ian, he has a 27% target share. That is an elite tight end 1. He has a 2.19 yards per route run. That is also an elite tight end 1. So those numbers align with top 3 options. We look at his utilization score. 92 last year, 94 this year. His historical comps have averaged 16.3 fantasy points. 89% of them have finished as top 3 tight ends. So we don't really need to keep going. You guys know it. We're just all happy. We all want to join together and just, be just have this moment of, we get all these injuries. We just lost Tucker Kraft. Like, sometimes, like, we get these joyous moments where we get a guy like Brock Bowers back, and it is absolutely amazing. So yeah, he's my tight end 1 the rest of the way.
Facing the Broncos here on Thursday night. And honestly, man, as much as that is a tough matchup for pretty much anyone, we get that, not taking anything away from them. Could actually be still a good spot for Bowers. Look, he's tight end 1 regardless, guys, but the Broncos run the most man coverage in the league. And unlike most tight ends, we actually see Brock Bowers being featured more against man coverage, 34% targets per out run, 23% versus zone. Probably not a coincidence. He racked up 22 targets in 2 meetings against the Broncos last season, I should say. So again, a situation where if you do have Bowers and then maybe you also have an Odunze Gaston or something, really wouldn't be afraid to flex one of those guys because that's how freaking good Brock Bowers is out there. Dwain, let's talk about a backfield, one that, let's face it, we got wrong. I think everyone else in the world did, but man, I've been spending the last 48 or so hours just sending handwritten apology notes to fantasy people because we said Tyrone Tracy was going to go ahead and take over this backfield. That was the case in 2024. That was the case in week 8. Unfortunately, it was not the case in week 9. So things could change moving forward, as always, Dwain, but for now, a downgrade for Mr. Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, and look, it's just a reminder. It's a sobering reminder that coaching behavior is just so wildly unpredictable. They're absolute animals. I mean, like they're like the zebra that bites your hand at the petting zoo. You know what I mean? Like these coaches, like they're completely rabid. They will just change on a dime. And that's what happened. You mentioned it. This wasn't just the fact that when Scadaboo went down, we saw Tyrone Tracy actually absolutely dominate the backfield last week with 78% of the snaps. It's also that over 13 games last year, they actually chose to use Tyrone Tracy over Devin Singletary with a 68% snap share. So we were really going off of a 14-game sample. And if we can't trust a 14-game sample to try to make a prediction, then man, I don't know what kind of world we live in, but it is the world we live in. And so now we have to adjust and move forward. The one thing I will say, Ian, after going back and looking at it even further and doing some more research, after we discussed it on Sunday night on the recap show, Tracy did have an injury late in the game that basically kept him off the field on the final 2 drives. So I was like, oh, well, maybe it was really just Tyrone Tracy, and then it was these last two drives. No, the trend was already there. So before the injury, Tracy was leading snaps 55-45, but still, that's a split that's closer than we wanted. Remember, guys, what we said, 78% of the snaps last week, 68% last year, 55 doesn't match those numbers, right? Rushing attempts, Singletary already had the lead. 46% to 39%. Now in route participation, it was Tracy, 59% to 26%. Tracy had an 18% target share through the drives before he got hurt, which is still a usable fantasy asset. But what does that sound like to you, Ian? That sounds like early down workload split with a slight lean to Singletary and Tracy as the pass down back. That means you're a running back 3. We can't make you a running back 2 whenever you're in that kind of role, unless you're playing like for, the 2001 Rams, then we would be fine with it. Right. But you're not. We're playing for the 2025 Giants. So yeah, he downgrades to mid-range RB3 territory. Don't drop him though, guys, because we could see them just turn around and, hand it back over to Tyrone Tracy. This was really weird that this happened. That's all I can say.
He's my RB27 right now in the ranks. Freeman's a little bit higher, RB23. Where I have him personally is behind guys like Woody Marks, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. He's still ahead of Bill Krosky-Merritt. He's ahead of RJ Harvey, Zach Charbonnet, Jordan Mason, and Bam Knight. So, again, not completely out. I think, again, Dwayne, we kind of said this on Sunday night. Unfortunately, it's pretty similar to Woody Marks. We saw a nice trend there. We accepted it, and that's just not how things have played out. So, going to be an RB3, and guess what? There's bye weeks. There's flex decisions. You're okay having an RB3, so I'm with you. Don't drop the guy. Maybe we do see, expand role moving forward, but unfortunately not too great right now. Devin Singletary does become someone where, no, for the love of God, please don't blow all your fab on the guy or anything like that. But hey, one injury away, or God forbid, just a fumble or a lot of drops, which let's face it, Tracy hasn't exactly been, the master of ball security. Devin Singletary could low-key, Dwayne, be a nice little bench stash himself.
Yeah, I mean, he upgrades to like borderline running back 4 status himself, and he is a handcuff now to, what we have with Tracy. And Tracy obviously got hurt at the end of the game. It's been underreported, but he's dealing with an injury right now. So what if we get a game where Devin Singletary, and it's the Bears this week, isn't it? The Giants?
Oh, yeah. Bears.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you had a running back that you knew was the starter and was going to get like 65 to 70% of the work, and then we told you they were going to be playing the Bears, you wouldn't even care who their name is. Like it could be me or Ian, and you would probably be willing to start them. So, yeah, Devin Singletary is available in 95% of Yahoo leagues. He should be on rosters, especially in the deeper leagues that some of you guys play in, you sickos.
All right, we love our sickos over here on the Fantasy Live Show, and we love our friends over at DraftKings as well as we transition throughout the rest of the show. Just one quick reminder, you can download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up a promo code Fantasy Life, bet just $5, and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook. More running back injury-related moves going on, Dwayne. A new feature back in Cincinnati. New feature back. He was already the running back, but we're talking truly featured now. Chase Brown looking like he could be back to his late 2024 ways with Samaje Perine dealing with a high ankle sprain. So they're on a bye week. They got Taj Brooks. Maybe he takes on more of the offense. But, man, Dwayne, we saw Chase Brown be an absolute bona fide league winner down the stretch of last season. If what we saw down the stretch here of week 9 persists into week 11 and beyond, we could be looking at that same sequence playing out again.
Yeah, absolutely. So the high ankle sprain is what makes it really interesting. Again, you mentioned they've got a bye this week, so we could see Samaje Perine not miss a game. Like these things are all different, but we've also seen players miss multiple weeks with high ankle sprains, and then we've seen them try to come back in and re-injure themselves. So the door essentially is open here for Chase Brown, and my gut says is that he will have the backfield to himself the week after the bye week, maybe another week after that. So we should get a little bit of leeway here with Chase Brown in this full-time role. So when you go back and you look at if you look at what we did last week with Chase Brown, we upgraded him. Why? Because of Joe Flacco. It was like, okay, the offensive environment has got an upgrade, opportunity to score more touchdowns, and that was really what was driving Chase Brown's value. But at the same time, we said Samaje Perine is really in a larger role than what we've seen all season over the last 3 to 4 games. So it was hard for us to really move Brown up very much more than what we did, which was make him a low-end running back too. But now with Flacco here and a chance to get this kind of a workload, Ian, to himself, I'll be honest, like he'll be a top 12 running back if we come back after the bye. Now, I haven't looked at who the matchup would be, but it would have to be a terrible one for me to not have this man in the top 12 running backs with Joe Flacco at the helm if we thought that he was going to be the lead back. So, yeah, it is one that might make him more of a borderline running back one, after what they just did to the Colts. But at the same time, like, I don't see there's any way that we don't have him in the top 15, whereas he's been a guy that's really been more of a low-end running back too. Just so you guys know, historical comparisons, like when we look at his utilization score of average 20.5 fantasy points per game, with 88% of them becoming running back 1 to running back 6 finishers. So if we, in the games where we don't have the crazy bad matchups, if we don't have Samaje Perine, obviously Chase Brown will be a must start. And the one other name just to mention here, Ian, is Taj Brooks. He would become the running back 2 handcuff for whatever period of games that Perine misses.
And again, it's one of those things where, you play over 90% of snaps in a game where Perine was hurt immediately. Maybe Brooks wasn't ready. The Cincinnati coaches didn't know that was going to happen, so it could change. But again, Dwayne, we saw this for half of a season last year, where literally in terms of teams that were most willing to leave one running back on the field for at least 75% or 90% of the snaps, Rams were number 1, Bengals were number 2. So we've seen Zach Taylor be more willing than pretty much anyone other than Sean McVay to leave one single running back on the field. And what I thought was just most encouraging was the receiving work from Chase Brown. He had 15.5 PPR points, Dwayne, in week 9 alone from receiving. He was only averaging 5.5 in weeks 1 through 8. Like, that was the area where Samaje Perine was really making, a name for himself. Last season in weeks 9 through 17, 10.7 PPR points per game just from receiving for Chase Brown. So, it would be a lot cooler if Joe Burrow's back sooner rather than later. But I don't know, man. Joe Flacco is inexplicably working as like 95% of Joe Burrow right now. So we'll see how long he can keep it going. But I'm with you. Chase Brown certainly looking like a rock solid RB1. And even if Perine does come back, man, he was already getting back into that upside RB2 conversation anyway. So good stuff there for anyone that, again, managed to stay alive while Chase Brown was going through some of his early season struggles. Moving along, Dwayne, let's talk about the J.J. McCarthy-led Minnesota Vikings offense. Got back on track, and let's face it, getting back on track was a pretty low bar to clear after what we saw during the first 2 weeks of the season. But to McCarthy's credit, he looked like a functional NFL quarterback, which is based on the discourse for the previous 6 weeks, man, when he was on the bench. It's nice to be able to say.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to say. So I think there are some positives to McCarthy. You put some really good film out on Twitter. People should go check it out on X. I thought he put several really good throws on tape. Kevin O'Connell was also more confident in him, Ian. In the first 2 games of the year, a drop back rate over expected of -9%, and this game -1%. So a more balanced attack. So those things are all steps in the right direction. But here's the big challenge for McCarthy. Okay, we're now 3 games in, and he still hasn't thrown for 160 yards. Like, that's just, and we're talking fantasy. We're not saying McCarthy can't go on to be a good, NFL quarterback, and then that is never going to happen. But right now, we need to think about, what does this mean for Justin Jefferson? What does this mean for Jordan Addison? What does this mean for the rest of this offense? And if you look at it, and you guys can see it on the screen here, 143 yards, 158 yards, and 143 yards in these games. Okay, completion rates of 65, 52, 56. Touchdowns have been pretty solid. He had 0 in one of those games, but he's had 2 games where he's had 2 passing touchdowns. Now, he's had at least 1 interception in every game. He's had 2 interceptions in one of those games. So on one hand, it's like, okay, young player, only his 3rd game, Ian. It is Kevin O'Connell. We should get things going. On the other hand, we can then compare him to every other passer that Kevin O'Connell has played with or has coached since 2022, basically in this offense. Not all of that had Jordan Addison, but it is this version of this offense. Carson Wentz this year averaged 243 yards versus the 148, right, for McCarthy. Sam Darnold averaged 254. Nick Mullins, this is kind of funny, in 4 games averaged 370. Josh Dobbs, the pastronaut, averaged 208. So, like, we would take that, man. Could we get like another 60 out of McCarthy? And that might be in the range of outcomes. Like, that could happen. And then there's Kirk Cousins, 284, right? So when we look at McCarthy, my problem is he's way under all of those guys. And while I get it, he's young, we also, I think at this point, have to acknowledge that this is not good for these receivers. Could he get it turned around? Yes, but I don't think we should assume it. So here's Justin Jefferson. His utilization score is a 79 in 3 games with J.J. McCarthy under center. And his historical comps, there's 61 of them, guys. They've averaged 15.7 fantasy points, which is better than the 14.2 he scored himself in those 3 games. 41% of them, though, were top 12 wide receivers. 49% of them were wide receiver 13 to 24. So we need J.J. McCarthy to turn this around. Like, I mean, and maybe it could be a situation like where it was early in the year with the Jets, Ian. And it's like Garrett Wilson was still able to get it going. But in those games, Justin Fields was outperforming our expectations. Now, he absolutely bombed in some of them, but in some of those games, you know, we were like, okay, like he's averaging far more yards than what he used to whenever he was sitting at that 180 per game. So I do think, though, like, Jefferson's just a borderline wide receiver 1 right now. Guys, he's an alpha, absolute elite player. So you don't want to give him away in a trade or anything, but you have to be concerned. Like, there's a really good chance he finishes as a wide receiver 2. When I did the rest of season projections today, Ian, he came in at wide receiver 15 because it takes all these things into account. And that was with me giving J.J. McCarthy 180 passing yards per game. Like, I just couldn't find it in myself to give him more than that right now. Like, he's at 148. And just real quick, Jordan Addison, like, this dude's in trouble, Ian. Jordan Addison is in big trouble. So I only have 1 game with him playing with McCarthy. So I can't use the utilization score. So I went back and I used my database and I used similar target shares and air yard shares on offenses that landed in these buckets I'm about to give you. The first bucket, 151 to 175 yards passing per game, which is essentially a tad higher than where we are right now. But like, we're giving McCarthy, we're going to say he's going to get over the 150. I think he will get over the 150. Ian, they averaged 7.4 fantasy points. None of them finished better than wide receiver 60. Okay. But let's say J.J. McCarthy gets a little better, 176 to 200 passing yards. They averaged 10.7 fantasy points per game. None of them were top 24 wide receivers. 25% of them were wide receiver 3s. 75% of them were wide receiver 4s or wide receiver 5s. Now, this might be Ian's view on it. Here's the truly optimistic view. What if he could throw for 201 to 225 yards per game? In that scenario, it does get better for Addison. The average comp scored 11.2 fantasy points per game, and you do have 14% of them finished as wide receiver 2s, but still most of them landed in that boom bust wide receiver 4 territory. So I think you're probably not happy with Justin Jefferson based on where you draft him, but he's still good enough. You're going to start him every week in fantasy. Jordan Addison, like, I think he's a very scary start right now until we see McCarthy turn it around.
Honestly, I wasn't feeling good about starting Addison, even with Carson Wentz under center. And obviously, he made the most of it, being a couple blown coverages here or there, but obviously still a good football player. But I'm with you, man. The clear-cut second banana of a passing attack that, again, even if you're being optimistic, now you're pushing for 200 passing yards per game. It is not great. So Justin Jefferson in these 3 games, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 39, and wide receiver 18 in PPR points. And that's with 2 touchdowns. Like, a lot of times when we see guys not having these great numbers, okay, they haven't found the end zone in a few weeks. Not even the case there for Jettas. So, Dwain, saw some trades over on Yahoo. Justin Jefferson for a package of A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think I would take it because there's a world where Justin Jefferson is the same as A.J. Brown straight up the rest of the way. If McCarthy keeps doing what he's doing, that's what it's going to be. And now you're getting to get A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson. So, yes, I would take that deal.
If you were a team that had Justin Jefferson and you were pretty good at wide receiver and you don't love your tight end, would you trade Jefferson for, I think Brock Bowers 100%. Trey McBride also?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would trade him for either one of those guys. I thought you were going to leave
trade
with
Justin?
Odunze Gadsden.
Not yet. Would you trade Justin Jefferson for Odunze?
No, I would hang on to Jefferson just because there's still this chance that McCarthy gets better. And Rome's been battling some of his own issues, over these last few weeks. So I would stick with Jettas over Rome.
I will say, guys, some trades that have been done today as we record this on November 4th for Jordan Addison, Sam Laporta, Travis Etienne, Oronde Gasson, and J.K. Dobbins. I'd probably trade Addison for like a good-looking can of Pringles, maybe like a used can of Pringles, man. So I'm saying yes to all those at this point.
Yeah, I'd probably trade Jordan Addison for like $5 in fab.
Or like $5 real life dollars, maybe like $1. I don't know at this point. So again, going to be tough for Addison there. Last point, though, the one thing we have seen from J.J. McCarthy, Dwayne, he's been running the ball actually pretty well. We scored 2 touchdowns. He joins as the only quarterbacks averaging at least 6 fantasy points per game from rushing. Josh Allen, Jackson Dart, Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. Justin Herbert leads the league in rushing from a quarterback. Something about quarterbacks with the first name starting with J. McCarthy does have the most fantasy-friendly schedule the rest of the way. Dwayne, where did he come out in your rest of season projections just among quarterbacks?
I don't have it in front of me. I want to say it was like 15 or 16 because of the rushing and the schedule. Okay. So it's funny. You guys are going to read this and you're going to be like, Dwayne says that this is bad news for the receivers. And then you're going to get to the waiver wire roundup. And the first name I have under quarterback is J.J. McCarthy. Why? Because he has this dual threat, type profile. And if he were to turn it around, Ian, he would be similar to Jackson Dart. Are we happy with Jackson Dart? You betcha we're happy with Jackson Dart. So it's kind of funny how both things can be true. We actually like J.J. McCarthy because of the archetype, but at the same time, we are acknowledging the fact that he is a challenge right now, at least for the wide receivers on the team.
And I would say if you guys needing a quarterback to stream this week, I think McCarthy is going to be in play. Freeman actually has him all the way up there at QB 14. I have him at QB 18. Sam Darnold is the dream guy. He's still available in around 50% of, I think Yahoo leagues right now. But after him, I would say Marcus Mariota and J.J. McCarthy are next best bets. Justin Fields would be ahead of those guys if Tyrod Taylor is out of the picture, but I am worried about mid-game benching from that standpoint. So good stuff, Mr. Dwayne. Guys, we do have some buy low candidates for you coming up here on the Fantasy Live Show. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Xfinity. If you call yourself a sports fan, you got to have Xfinity. All the games, all in one place. What a concept. Here's what you get when you watch sports with Xfinity. The Sports Zone, which features every pro football game, all of them, and over 1,000 college games, highlights and alerts, all in one place. A multi-view option, which lets you be up to 4 stadiums at once. The Xfinity Fan View, which features live scores, odds, and stats, again, all in one place and all personalized to you. And did I mention it's all in enhanced 4K, simply stunning viewing experience. And to find all this with your voice remote, all you have to do is say football. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Note that restrictions do apply to new residential customers only. Taxes and fees are extra and subject to change. We got a buy low coming up, Dwayne. First, though, we do need to pour some, water on someone who really was just dominating to start the season. But it's been a minute now. Keenan Allen over there with the Chargers, okay? Weeks 1 through 3, 18.8 PPR points per game. He was the wide receiver 6 in fantasy. Since week 4, though, Dwayne, wide receiver 41. And honestly, that's just mostly thanks to one massive boom in week 7. He has finished outside of the position's top 40 wide receivers in 5 of the last 6 weeks. So again, a situation where he started very strong, but man, has a drop off been tough for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, and before, there was still hope that things would turn around because he was really in the same role. We had a crowded offense and things like that, but now we've got multiple factors working against Keenan. So don't know if you guys will be able to move him. I will say there's one positive here, and that's the fact that you got CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Who else? We got the Chiefs, so you got Rashid Rice, you got Xavier Worthy. You have a lot of bye weeks this week for wide receivers. So if you were to try to move Allen and still be able to get anything, I think this is the week. But man, just multiple things working against him, Ian. We've seen over the last 2 games, route participation has dropped to 50 and 54%. There's really 2 things that are going on with the Chargers. Number one, they're more willing to run some of their heavier personnel groups. And we've heard that in the coach speak, and then we've seen that actually come true on the field as well. So the times they have run 11 personnel guys, which is 1 tight end and 3 wide receivers over the first 5 games or first 4 games of the season. Sorry, my bad. First 7 weeks of the season, 58% snaps were in 11 personnel over the last 2 games. That's dropped down to 47%. And then the second thing that is hitting him is Trey Harris. They are wanting to get their rookie second-round pick more playing time. And so over the first 4 games, he had a route participation of 19%. Since week 5, that has jumped to 35%, excluding week 6, which he was the starter over Quentin Johnston, who was out. So he had an 86% route participation in that game. But that's completely taking that out of the sample. So you've got this change going on with the offense, and then you've got them wanting to get the young player more involved. Like, I will say this, like Ian Allen, he makes the most of his time on the field. He still has a 24% targets per route run. He leads the team over the last 2 games. But man, when you're only out there 50% of the routes, even on a team like the Chargers that like to throw the ball around the schoolyard quite a bit, it's just going to be a challenge. And then the final thing is just Oronde Gadsden as well. Like, I mean, Gadsden coming on and doing his thing, obviously that's impacting everyone here. But yeah, I had to downgrade Mr. Keenan Allen all the way to low-end wide receiver 3 territory, to be honest. Like, you could say high-end wide receiver 4, and I really wouldn't blink. So yeah, big downgrade for Keenan. Not sure you guys can get anything for him, but I do think this is the week to try if you happen to have a manager in your league that might have 2 or 3 guys on bye that are normally starting for him.
Maybe you can get it from there, Dwain. My only rebuttal will be wait 1 week because they're about to play the Steelers. And if we know one thing, it's that these slot man-beating wide receivers like Keenan Allen and Lab McConkey can't have some massive games against Mike Tomlin and company. So that'd be my only, because everything you just said is right. I am not expecting big things from Keenan Allen moving forward. We might have a chance for one more boom, though, here before you can cut ties, hopefully at a better price. So we'll see what happens there. But yes, Keenan Allen certainly not looking like the same monster we saw back in September. But great utilization graphics there. And I did want to invite you guys, appreciate you listening to us wherever you are, but we are also on Roku Sports, Fubo Sports, the Unbeaten Sports channel, in addition to Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you find podcasts. So again, if you're trying to get some cool visuals and graphics as you're checking out the Fantasy Live show, always plenty of options for you, and we appreciate that. Dwain, let's get into the buy low. Someone who, again, I could not stop drafting in round 4 all summer long. Then we had an unfortunate injury, and then we got all excited because he came back. But now, Dwain, I'm kind of mad. George Kittle is not giving us anything here. I cannot believe that he only has 11 targets over these last 3 games. I can live with CMC having nearly double as many targets, but Juwan Jennings with 19 targets compared to 11 from Kittle. Come on, man. So talk about, again, Kittle, who's underperforming right now, but maybe has the potential to boom here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I just think that Kittle is one of these players, Ian, that we should just ignore this 3 games. Like, throw utilization out the window. Like me, I am telling you, just throw utilization out the window. I get it, guys, but are you ever going to have an opportunity to potentially buy lower than right now on Kittle? To Ian's point, since he's returned, he scored 0, then 14, and then 7 fantasy points. He's averaging 7.1. So that manager that waited all that time to get him back, Ian and me, in many leagues. And then now you're getting these 7.1 fantasy points. That can just lead people to get frustrated, man. And I'll just tell you this, maybe George Kittle isn't what he was last year, but he's still better than this. That's what I'm going to tell you. He is still better than this. And CMC, yeah, he's doing his thing. But look, George Kittle is still a better player than Juwan Jennings. George Kittle is a better player than Kendrick Bourne. Now, we are eventually going to get Ricky Pearsall back. George Kittle, also, I believe, still a better player than Ricky Pearsall. Brandon Ayuk will come back. So things are going to eventually get crowded. But at the same time, Ian, if any time you can swoop in on a player like this, like George Kittle, where they're underperforming this badly, even though the underlying data matches it and says he's bad, I'm willing to take the risk. I want to trade for Kittle, but how about you?
Looking at some trades that have been done on Yahoo today, George Kittle was acquired for Travis Etienne and Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that's a pretty reasonable package deal there. Also straight up for Breece Hall and Alvin Kamara. Again, all these depend on your roster, and obviously you got to look around your league and see who is going to, be needy of a running back or wide receiver. But I think I'm down for those, Dwayne. Again, it's a guy where it's not like this is a new phenomenon where George Kittle has a couple quiet weeks, okay? It's a little bit annoying here because, again, we had the injury time off, and there's also not Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in the offense. But man, Brock Purdy should theoretically be back at some point this year. I would think that helps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like the trades that you mentioned. Obviously, Breece Hall had that really big game the other day, but I think the biggest takeaway is like people are going to be more willing right now than probably at any point this season to move George Kittle. So just go see what you can do.
Something to keep in mind there for sure. Also something to keep in mind, we got some more utilization, underperformers and overperformers here on the Fantasy Life Show. Someone that I was very happy to draft this offseason, and also someone who honestly gave us some really good weeks between weeks 3 and 7. Yeah, RB16 and PPR points per game, guys. Jordan Mason, unfortunately, Dwayne, Aaron Jones and that hamstring injury is back in action. Just unfortunately for Jordan Mason fantasy managers. All right, don't put that evil on me. I love Aaron Jones. I'm happy he's healthy and everything. But yeah, Dwayne, again, when Aaron Jones comes back, good for one fantasy manager, not so good for another. Certainly it's a reason to be downgrading Jordan Mason in the utilization report.
Yeah, and 4 games with Aaron Jones, we have Jordan Mason with a utilization score of 44. He's averaged 5.2 fantasy points per game in those 4 contests. And in this last game, Ian, before Aaron Jones suffered that AC sprain, the AC joint sprain, he had 77% of the snaps. So he had actually just literally just taken the backfield over. Now, again, coaches can change their mind. Things can move around. Lots of things can happen. But that's what we saw in that game. So Mason's historical comps based on the games when he's had Aaron Jones in there have averaged 8 fantasy points per game, with 91% of them finishing outside the top 36 running backs. That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. So Mason downgrades to running back 4 territory. Do note, guys, the Vikings do have a good matchup against the Ravens in week 10, and we might not have Aaron Jones. Now, he said that it's a minor injury. They really downplayed it, but we'll have to keep an eye on the practice report. So don't go release Jordan Mason right now. We could end up seeing him as like, a guy that not good with Aaron Jones, but when we don't have Aaron Jones and you get a nice matchup, he would definitely be in our top 24 if we thought he was the lead back against the Ravens.
Again, disappointing. Even RB16, while Aaron Jones was out, like that was, I would say, worse than what I would have kind of expected in the preseason and everything. So lack of scoring upside in the offense hasn't helped. Offensive line hasn't exactly been dominating. I'm not putting it all on Jordan Mason's shoulders, but certainly not exactly been ideal relative to some of our preseason expectations. Let's talk about the Bears, Dwayne, and just how we got to kind of siphon between, changing utilization, and also the fact that, they just beat the piss out of the Bengals, and who doesn't do that, in the year 2025. So Kyle Monungai, awesome game. And let's face it, he was trending up even a little bit before DeAndre Swift was out. But man, the shocking thing to me, just looking at the Bengals, dead last in PPR points per game, allowed the running backs. But the difference between them and second place, who's the Giants, is the same difference between the Giants and the number 15 ranked Chargers, Dwayne. So cannot overstate how grave a matchup this was. But to Monungai's credit, boy, did he take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, his utilization score is up 16 points over the last 4 games, and a huge part of it is a 92 utilization score. So, and that was with DeAndre Swift out. So we'll acknowledge that he played well, had a great matchup, but let's just set that aside. I think the bigger thing to focus on is the 2 games before DeAndre Swift got hurt and missed, which was week 9. So week 7 and 8, he had 46 and 45% snap shares, did the rookie Monungai. Okay. And so if you look at what he did in those games from a utilization score perspective, he had a 66. Historical comparisons in that range averaged 12.4 fantasy points, with 45% of them finishing as running back 3s. That really surprised me whenever I looked up the comparisons for Monungai based on just those 2 games before last week. So I think last week we obviously saw the contingency upside can be really huge, especially when the matchup works out in your favor. But man, Monungai is really a borderline running back 3. like just based on those other two games. And he has this running back one contingency upside. So yeah, really, really, really nice things going on for him here. And it's just a little bit closer split than what we would really like, for DeAndre Swift as well, getting closer to like this 45-55 territory.
For what it's worth, both DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson were out, but neither guy even practiced last week. And let's face it, Roschon's had nothing going all season long. So the fact we did, again, just get the evidence that we have Monangai being the running back, y'all, without Swift. It's great handcuff upside and honestly a reason to prioritize him on the bench, even if and when Swift is good enough to come back to action. But, we don't get to play the Bengals every week. But guess what? The one team worse than the Bengals in terms of EPA allowed per rush are the New York Football Giants, who the Bears get this week. So, man, Dwayne, I rank Kyle Monangai as my RB13 going into this matchup. Again, if Swift is remaining sidelined, honestly, if you want to rank him ahead of guys like Quinshon Judkins, maybe even Kyron Williams, if you had a couple, Mike's Hard Lemonades in you, I would not call you crazy. Also, though, we do have I would say the one bad news coming out of that Bears game was Rome Odunze's goose egg, man. It has gotten to the point where Papa Odunze is mouthing off on Twitter and not too happy about things as well. So, tale of two halves here for Rome. In weeks 1 through 4, everything was going great. Victory laps were running wild. We're looking at the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game. Since week 6, Dwayne, the wide receiver 67, which is shocking, but I don't know. It's not that far off from where he finished last year. So where are you treating this with Rome? Were weeks 1 through 4 a Fugazi, or are we thinking, better days will be back to be ahead?
Well, I think the beauty of this is like we now have a larger sample of 8 games. The Bears have had a bye week in there. So 9 weeks minus the bye week. We've got 8 games. And that probably tells us like the better truth about Rome Odunze, because these players get hot, they get cold, these things come and go. The larger the sample is, typically the more accurate that we're going to be. The utilization score definitely picks up accuracy in samples of 4+ games. And so when you go past that, it does even better. But when we look at Odunze, you mentioned it, he had the dud this last weekend with a 0. He's really been on a roller coaster since the bye. And part of that has been due to them wanting to run the ball more. There's just been less passing to go around. Like his target shares have still been pretty good, Ian. But now this last week, it was not. He had a 9% target share. He did have a touchdown that he potentially dropped. You could also argue that Caleb threw a little bit behind him. Either way, Rome had his hands on the ball, had his arms at least on the ball. So it could have saved a little bit of the box score there. But yeah, when you look at him, and you look at his utilization score for the season now, when you put it all together, it's sitting at a 69. And I think that's the most important thing. He's in 3 of the last 4 games has been under a 50, but he's still at a 69 because he had a strong start to the season. His comparisons have averaged 13.2 fantasy points per game. 37% of them were top 24 wide receivers. 42% of them were wide receiver 25 to 36. So much more in that borderline wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 conversation than what we really were hoping for, just a few short weeks ago.
And I will say, he had the Ravens game 2 weeks ago where he had 114 yards. You mentioned the arguable touchdown drop last week. And even that Washington game, the first one back from the bye, he had a sick touchdown catch where it got wiped out because the offensive lineman was, an extra foot back from the line of scrimmage, and the referee wanted them to be. So it's not like the dude's completely fallen off a cliff. And I do think he could climb his way back up this week. Dwayne, I've mentioned some of those man zone splits, and Rome is popping as someone who really could have a big one. 26% targets per route run versus man this year. 19%, I should say, against zone. Giants have been a top 5 defense in man cover, so keep an eye out for that. Last one, Dwayne, a true breakout last week. Colston Loveland, $118 and 2 touchdowns. Very impressive stuff out there. Again, though, it was against the Bengals, who are quite horrible against tight ends. It's not as big of a gap as I talked about with the running backs, but it's close, man. That gap, 4.3 PPR points, the same as the 31st ranked defense, the Jaguars, and the 20th ranked one, that being the Panthers. So Cole Kmet is in concussion protocol, though. So again, if we are going to have a situation where Kmet is out of the picture for another week, I got Loveland ranked as a top 10 tight end, and I'm sure you will too.
Yeah, Colston Loveland's utilization score has climbed by 21 points over the last 4 weeks. So that leads everyone at all positions. Now, part of it has been because we've had Cole Kmet concussion, Cole Kmet back injury, and now Cole Kmet with another concussion. So hopefully he is going to be okay, but that's obviously boosted things. He had a 97 utilization score, did Colson Loveland in week 9, 29.8 fantasy points. You mentioned really great matchup. It was the number one DVP matchup heading into the week versus the Bengals, who can't cover anyone, but they have also been really terrible against tight ends. I think the bigger story, though, for me, Ian, is like digging beneath on this. If you look before Cole Kmet left the game, Loveland had a 64% route participation. Cole Kmet had 21%. So it does feel like Loveland is already slowly starting to take over. Now, it's better for him when Kmet's not in there because he can have like an 80-85% route participation versus like a 65 to 70. And I don't know that Kmet will completely go away. He's a guy that has money on his contract. Like he's, who knows? Who knows if he will or not? But the point being that Loveland does appear to have passed Kmet anyway. So that just makes it easier. Like if you guys are wanting to go wild on the waiver wire, even though you may not have like 85%, Colson Loveland after this coming week, you still might have 70%. You still might have 75%. And, he is a guy that the rookie supermodel liked a lot. So there's a lot of upside here. So he's available in 76% of Yahoo leagues. If looking rest of season, Ian, I say he's a high end tight end too this week, to your point, obviously going to be inside the top 12 because we probably won't have Cole Kmet.
I got him as my tight end 9, just ahead of guys like Kyle Pitts, Theo Johnson, Harold Fannin, and Mark Andrews. Freeman has him as his tight end 10. So again, we're on the same page. And whenever I think I'm high on someone and Freeman's on the same page, Dwain, I feel better about that take. So again, guys, you can check out the full utilization report for free over on fantasylife.com. Also have all of our rankings and utilization tools behind that paywall if you're into that kind of thing. So appreciate you tuning in. If you guys like the show, then please like the show, and hitting that subscribe button always helps as well. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.